Welcome to another Gamer Partner Artist Feature interview. Today we meet Buitrago. Buitrago, all the way from Colombia, is a creative coder who really explores inspiration from his country with its rich history and colors and vibrancy, but also creates in a way where he brings his collectors closer and includes them in the process, including curating their own outputs. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Okay, very excited to be chatting with Buitrago today. Buitrago joins us from Colombia. He's a Gamma Partner artist, a generative artist, someone who describes his work as the intersection of art, technology, and mathematics. So I'm very excited to explore and dive into all of that with you today, Buitrago. I'd love for you to tell your story. You can go all the way back to when you were just a little niño in Colombia, up until this point. How did you get creative? How did you get into generative art? But yeah, tell your story, and thanks for being here.
Okay, thanks for the invitation, Brett. I'm very happy to be here, sharing this time with you. Okay, my story begins as a kid. I think a lot of artists discovered their aptitudes to be an artist since childhood. Same for me. I was a kid that loved to draw, to create things with my hands. But one day, a friend told me that he wanted to be an architect, and I thought that that was great, and I decided to study architecture. But uh, after after got graduated from my school, I found that I really wanted to be an artist instead of an architect. I do love architecture, and it has a lot of influence on my work because I use a lot of software, architectural software like AutoCAD or SketchUp or things like that. But after the years, I discovered that I am really an artist. I started to paint as a hobby, and then one day, one person told me about NFTs and Ethereum and etc. Crypto. I didn't knew anything about that in that time. Just like bad things, like Bitcoin is bad, something like that. And that person teach me about crypto. I started to making research about that, and I found that very interesting. So that person helped me to upload my first NFT collection back in August 2021, and I immediately sold out that collection, and that was like, wow, what's happening here? And after that, I started to be more related with the community, the NFT community, and I started to research about technology, and I found the creative coding, generative art. I didn't knew at that moment that I could create art using code. I do love math and art. And when I found that I could create art using math, for me it was like, wow, this is my place. This is where I belong. So I started to study how to code, how to create art with code. It took me a long, to be honest, like maybe 6 months or something like that. I started to create my first generative projects. And yes, step by step, I started to have collectors to grow my community, and then I started to try different blockchains. I tried Base, I tried Arbitrum, I tried Polkadot, Solana, but then I found Bitcoin, and my mind was like blown away again. And I started to study Bitcoin like for a year before releasing my first collection on Bitcoin. That was on October 2024. And now I found Gamma. That is a very, very nice place for artists, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're super glad that you did find us and that you are releasing work with us. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. It's funny. I see a lot of confluence between your friend saying he wanted to be an architect and then you explored that, because architecture is still a real mix of maths and art, which is where you ended up with your generative art collection. But let's go back to, you mentioned that you realized or you felt you were an artist. What was that exploration like? And tell us about the first release. Where was it? And I suppose, was it in a completely different style to what you do now?
Yeah, sure. At that time, I draw. Mostly, I draw with pencil, like black and white portraits. But one day I was like, I don't want to create a realistic portrait. I want to do something with color. So I started to try with acrylic paint on canvas. That those first paintings were very expressive, full of colors, and inspired on Colombian landscapes. Those were my first paintings, and those were my start as an artist.
It's funny that you bring up that they are inspired by your surroundings. As you said, being in Colombia, I've been fortunate enough to have traveled to Colombia twice. It's such a vibrant, warm, very art forward, so there's such a warm culture there. Has that rubbed off on the way you create, and does it still do so even in creative coding?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, a collection. My first collection was bold. Bold is inspired on geometric patterns that you can find also in the pre-Hispanic Colombian cultures. So yes, I found inspiration on my country, on my roots. Also, for example, in my work science thesis, I did a lot of research on the color palettes, and I used a lot of colors from my country. Some color palettes are very explosive, like some of the colors of my country, of my culture. So yes, I got inspired by my culture a lot.
That's interesting. And as a side note, what is the digital art scene and I guess creative coding scene, or NFT slash now ordinals or inscriptions on Bitcoin, I guess scene like in Colombia? Is it growing? Are you connected with other Colombians creating art and putting their art on chain, whether it be on Bitcoin or elsewhere?
Yes, absolutely. We have a little community here in Colombia. Uh, I think most of us started at the same time back in 2021, and we created a community. We have been together since that. We have exposed our work in different countries, like in Panama, in New York. Um, we have participated in also in international events of NFT, like NFT NYC, or or here in Bogota, in Colombia. Yes, we are not like a big group, but we are united. We support each other.
That's really lovely to hear. Yes, I remember Bogota being a very art forward city. There's so many little sort of enclaves of artists and little galleries and studios everywhere. So that's quite interesting. And you mentioned at the start you only had, and this is what is kind of like the wide perception, which I think is slowly changing, almost a negative view of crypto or Bitcoin, which is obviously very different, your viewpoint now. How was that evolution? How did you decide to take the chance to put your work, uh, you know, or create NFTs and now obviously ordinals?
Okay, good. The thing was that at first I thought that it was a scam, and but after 1 month or something like that, I got sick from COVID, and I didn't have anything to do. I was very bored, and I say like, okay, I'm going to give one opportunity to this person, and I'm going to start reading and learning about that. And when I started to do that, it was very interesting to see that I could upload my art without like a curation, because uh, the world of art is very close, you know. And in I live in a city that is very tiny, and here the art is not like something people supports. So I found a great opportunity to show my art into the world. So I found that very interesting. And that was the main thing that pushed me to upload my work, to create my first NFT collection, to start learning about this world that at that time I didn't knew anything. And I think that was my best decision.
Yeah, and it's paid off and you're still here, which is terrific. It
Yeah.
must be quite a unique feeling to have been able to gather and connect with a global audience when you say, you know, from a small town in Colombia where otherwise it might have been hard to pursue your career as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to crypto and the art community on crypto, now I have collectors around the world, in UK, USA, Singapore, I don't know, many places that I think I couldn't do it before because I didn't have like the exposition to the world.
And you mentioned you learned coding. It took 6 months to get that. You know, no one ever masters anything, but to get a good handle on to be able to create in that way. Tell us about that learning process.
Okay. Yes, I'm an architect, but I didn't study code in the university. But I have a lot of knowledge on geometry, math, and I started to study code, to see some YouTube videos to learn. And it was like that how I learned how to code, and just experimenting. And yes, that was the main thing on how I learned to code. It was just I wanted to do this, and I started to study. It was very frustrating at first, but I just keep doing because I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to create art with math because, as I said, I love math and art, and it was like I want to do this. I have to do this, and no more.
And where do you think the love of maths came from to start with?
Since childhood, also, I was very good at math always at school. I studied math until 17 years. I have 17 years at that time. And then at the university, I didn't properly study math, but I studied geometry. And the thing was that many years after, I started to teach to kids, and I need to review my math knowledge. And I was like, wow, I found this very interesting. I have to forget that I love it, math a lot. So I started to again study math by myself. And then I found the code, the creative coding. So it was like a mixture, you know?
For sure. And what about that artistic drive in you? Was that nurtured by family? Did you get taken to galleries, or was it just something that you personally started to appreciate and enjoy and realize that you had a skill for as the years wore on?
Yes, I think this was like very personal. I don't have a main influence on my family in art. It's mainly me, because I like all the humanistic subjects. I also write. I love to read. I love to go to museums to see art. Uh, I love architecture. So yes, it's like a personal um, interest.
For sure. Well, let's pull up some of your art and we can talk about it. But before we do, actually, I forgot one question before we do that. You mentioned how you've created physically, and I know with Bold, you also created physicals for that collection. Yeah, where do you see how the digital and the physical fits together, and how do you think about that?
Yes, many people thinks that digital and physical are like opposites, but I don't think so. So I found very interesting the relationship between the digital and the physical because it's very contemporary. We are beings that are immersed in a digital world. In the meantime, we are in a physical world. So this dialogue between physical and digital is very interesting for me. So one of the things I like the most is to create a digital piece, but to give the collector the opportunity to own also a physical, but not only like a print, something created by hand. As I can paint, I like to recreate those digital pieces into a canvas, acrylic paint on canvas.
Yeah, it's certainly a really unique take on it, and something that really resonates with me as well. So I'm glad that you do that. So let's pull up a couple of the prints that you've put out. But first of all, we'll look at Synesthesis, which has a really interesting story. So we can see that 30 have been collected, and collectors of these prints, these on-chain editions, get to do something special. Tell us about what this is all about, but then also how did you come up with that concept?
Okay, good. Okay, this starts when I started to painting in acrylic paint on canvas, inspired by landscapes of my country. I started to ask myself why I'm doing this, and the answer was very clear. I'm doing this because I want to to achieve beauty. My interest is beauty. And I also started to read about beauty, to think about beauty, and then I found that beauty is in the relationship of different parts, not only one thing, but different parts that get in relationship. Between that relationship, there is beauty. So in this project, that was my main purpose, to create something beautiful, uh, putting in relationship different shapes like circles, strokes, colors. And after that, I found that you have to seek beauty as a being. And when you seek beauty as a being, you can recognize yourself as a spiritual being and then experiment something that is beautiful, and you feel good, you feel nice when you found that. So here in this project, I wanted to give the opportunity to the collectors to decide themselves what pieces resonates with them most. So what I did here was to create a print, but after the collector uh, bought the print, I sent a link with a preview of different outputs from the code, and they decide I want this one, and then I sent that specific design to their wallets with a little message to make this very personalized, so they can connect with that piece and have a special relationship with that piece. It's not just like anything now. It's meaningful.
Yeah, completely. Let's pull up some of the pieces that they've selected. It's interesting that you mentioned that. You mentioned a little bit ago about how you have this global audience now, and when you first released a collection, you were able to gather community and be able to connect with people around the world. And this, I don't want to call it an experiment. I guess this project is experimenting with that, though. You know, it's gathering collectors, it's bringing them closer to you in a bit of a different way, which is quite fascinating. So let me just pull this up. But yeah, feel free to comment on that.
Yeah, this is very special because this collection have allowed me to talk with my collectors. You know, sometimes when you release a collection, people buy your thing, but you don't have the opportunity to talk with your collectors. Here it's impossible. You have to DM me. So we start a relationship. We start talking, and they told me things, very interesting things. Like, for example, I decided this design because my daughter loves that. This design was chosen by my son. I don't know. So I started to know more about the personal life of collectors, and it's grateful for me. I feel very happy because of that.
Yeah, it really brings the collector and the artist together, which is something that is very different from the physical art world. And it must be fascinating for you to relinquish that control over what goes into the collection because they make the decision.
Absolutely. I love to think about this collection as uh, a statement from the community. This reflects their taste. They show their decisions.
Yes, it's fascinating how you've made it a collaborative project with the collectors. And the fact that they have to select something themselves, I think probably gives them a greater sense of connection to the piece rather than minting something, which is great, but you don't know what you're going to get potentially. So it's a very different way to approach it.
Some collectors choose very quickly, and others took a lot of time to design. They just download a lot of outputs and do this and that and ask their family. So that's very interesting also.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess it's sort of like their own version of curating what ends up in their wallet. It's in a similar way, but differently with ADOS. You created a collection whereby the collector will mint it and receive a piece, but then they can manufacture it. They can play around with the placement of each element and then download that if they like, but to create an artwork that speaks to them. So there's a part of that like control by the collector is in this collection too.
Yes, as I said, my main inspiration, my main purpose is the seek of beauty, and not only beauty for me. I want to create something that allows the collector to create beauty for themselves, so they can have the opportunity to know what means to create beauty. So in this project, I tried to create a code that allows the collector to move the different shapes in the canvas until they found that beauty. So it's a project specifically made to allow the collector to create beauty. They move the shape, the circle around here, the square around that, and suddenly they found beauty in those relationship between the parts. As I said before, I think the beauty is in the relationship of different parts. So that was the main idea when I started to create this project called ADOS.
Yeah, and I'm demonstrating it here. I can move things around and get creative myself. You're turning your collectors into their own artists, I suppose.
Yeah.
That must be a lot of fun. Have you had collectors share with you various things that they've created?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially one collector is now a good friend. It's called Hando. He sent me their outputs, and it's very beautiful to see how people that think they don't have like a special artistic skill or something like that feel very happy to be able to create something beautiful by themselves.
I agree. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but I think everybody is an artist in their own way. Obviously, some go on with it and perhaps are better than others, but everybody is an artist. Kids are artists. In fact, kids are the best artists in the sense that they don't care about what other people think about what they create. So we should all take a leaf out of their book. Do you remember creating as a child? Do you remember, back when you were a kid, being creative, drawing and doing those sorts of things?
Yes, I like it a lot to draw. I love it to draw on everything. I also was very creative with my hands. I like it to create something like an airplane with my hands. So yes, I was a very creative kid in my childhood.
Fantastic. And then a couple of your other collections. Let's look at Ammonia first. It seems like you've explored movement. These ones are, constantly moving. They're dynamic. They live on Bitcoin in this flow state, if you like.
Yeah, in this collection, I wanted to show how the movement is described with uh, equations. So that was my main purpose, like to show that movement and the beauty is described mathematically by trigonomical functions. So you can have some organic movement, but also a non-organic movement, like you know those strokes in diagonal that are very sharp, in contrast with those ones that are very organic movement. So that was my main purpose on this project, like to show that part of me that is very interested into mathematics.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about it, how it was created, or more about that concept?
Yeah, I started to think how can I create something uh, in movement that is described by mathematics. So I started to play with different I don't know how to say in English, but trigonomical functions. I don't know the pronunciation.
I think like trigonometric, like,
Trigonometric
yeah.
functions. Well, seno, coseno in Spanish.
Yes. Yeah. Sine and cosine in English.
Tan, cosine, tangente. Okay, so I started to explore square of cosine of seno, square of sine plus blah blah blah, and I started to play with the x and the y ejes. So I started to found that I could have organic movement just using this, and that was very interesting for me because that's a proof that uh, our reality, the reality, is could be described by mathematics. Like the rain could be described as mathematics. The wind could be described as mathematics. The the grass, the movement of grass, could be described as mathematics. So when I found this similarity between those movements and the code that I have been created, it was very special for me, and that was the main thing that moved me to create this.
Yeah, interesting. It takes me back to year 10 math, I think, when we were doing trigonometry and triangles. I wish somebody told me that could have led to me creating some artwork with it. That's quite fascinating. And what about the color choice in this one?
Yeah, the color choice, I just wanted to have something very vibrant, in contrast with black. And also colors show that movement, if you can see, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main reason. I just wanted to show movement in a mathematical way.
Yeah, and another collection or set of editions, the on-chain editions as prints that you've put out recently. I suppose if you say it with in the Spanish way, vivus, is that correct? Explore. There's a lot of movement, very fast movement actually, and then it look, as we've just seen, it's sort of shape changing.
Yeah, it's like for me, it's a very beautiful piece. And what I wanted to do here was like an evolution of harmonia, you know. Uh, and what I wanted to show here is also a concept that is life itself. While in Harmonia, I wanted to show how the life could be described with mathematics. Here, I wanted to show that life is also always a movement, like growing and decreasing. Everything goes better and then worst. Everything grows and then decrease. So life is always changing, and that's the most continuous thing on life, the change. So that was my main inspiration for this project.
And is that something that you have conceptually in your mind before you start, or does that come out as you start creating?
Well, in this case, I started to experiment, and then I found something that I like it, and I start digging on those and so on until I found that this movement of growing and decreasing, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, and I started to shape the project around this idea.
Interesting. So you have an idea potentially at the start, but then it evolves as you create. Is that something that tends to be part of your process?
Yes, I think my process is very experimental process. You know, I have some background ideas of myself, but I am also open to the new, to the experimental, to the things I don't know. You know, and I like to explore that. What happened if, and then the code blows my mind. Well, wow, I didn't expect that. So I start to, how if I do this? How if I do that? And after that, like experimenting, I found the concept and the realization of the project, the picture and two.
I love that. I think that that's a great place to leave it. It's been an absolute pleasure diving a little deeper and finding out more about you and your work and the different collections and conceptually, pardon me, where it all comes from. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share, or is there anything that you're perhaps experimenting with at the moment that we might see on Bitcoin at some stage soon?
Well, right now, I'm always working on something new, but right now, I'm working on a new collection that I want to do again. This relationship between physical and the digital. I will be posting on this later. Uh, but yes, right now I'm exploring an idea of how I can create something that is multi-scale, like bigger and I don't know how to say pequeño, cada vez más pequeño,
Smaller?
smaller, sorry, and it's smaller every time. So I want to explore those relationships between forms and mathematics, and then I like to link that always to a philosophical concept about existence. So that's something that is interesting for me. And so yes, I'm working, I'm always studying, I'm always exploring something new. If my collectors want to know more about my ideas, what I have in my mind, but by the concepts of my art, feel free to DM me. I like to know your thoughts about that, and I like to share what I think. Um, I also like to write, so I have written a lot of essays about the concepts of my work. If you want to read about that, just DM me. I would share with you.
Well, I certainly would. So perhaps I need to DM you. I love reading the deeper dive, the more of the information, what started up here and then ended up on the screen. So Buitrago, I love that you do that. I love how open you are, sharing and speaking with your collectors and how you really bring them into what you do. It's a pleasure to have you as a Gamma Partner artist, and thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for the invitation, Brett. I'm very happy to be part of the Gamma family.